Welcome back, everybody, to the Even Your Dynasty show.
We just got breaking news in.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Even Your Dynasty show. We're back on, it's day 2 of the winter meetings now. The big storyline that keeps kind of surrounding the Giants over the last, especially couple weeks, has been Bryce Eldridge and whether or not the team's, really going to look at trading him. If they're shopping him around, if they're, kind of dangling him, trying to get a pitcher in here. A lot of talk, especially from some of the reporters, that they feel, it would almost make sense if the Giants could get, a rotation stalwart to go ahead and trade him right now, while his value's at its highest. And we're going to kind of dive in on this, on, kind of both the logic behind what you should trade him and also the logic behind whether or not they should keep him. And I'm really going to more than anything talk about the fact that the team's at a crossroads with him. Like, this is the time to make this decision, and I'm going to go into why there. But starting off a little bit about Bryce, obviously, he's the number 19 prospect with Baseball America right now. He's the highest ranked prospect they've had since Marco Luciano in 2022 when it comes to top 100 prospects. Luciano is number 17 in 2022. Now, I'll also talk a little bit. I'm going to do this comparison with Luciano. I'm going to talk a little bit about why not all top 20 prospects are equal. We're going to go kind of in how there's a lot of different types of prospects when you're looking down the list. Because I don't like that comparison. I hate that every time somebody goes, hey, we should trade him, the first thing they do is go, well, look at what happened to Luciano. And there is some truth to that. It is a cautionary tale, but there's a lot of differences between the two of them. And I'm going to go into that. But yeah, so the big thing has been a lot of people are talking about trading him. And, some of the reasons that makes sense as to why you would look into him is, at the end of the day, he is just a prospect. And all of us should acknowledge that, including myself here. At the end of the day, he's an unproven commodity. He is simply a prospect as of right now. And you just never know if they're going to hit. Now, that said, you look at top 20 prospects, and to me, there needs to be a set value at which you are willing to deal him. And I'm always open to listening on people. I think Posey's saying the right things. Him and Minasian, they're all saying the right things, that, anybody's available. Nobody's off the table, which should be your stance on every player, almost every player in the major leagues right now. There's like one or two guys like, Ohtani and Judge that shouldn't be available, but everybody should have a price. And if a team is willing to meet that, astronomical price for certain players, then, you should be willing to deal them as far as I'm concerned. But you get a point where the price becomes so insane that nobody reasonably is going to deal them. And that's where, like, I don't like the word untouchable, because I don't think any of these guys ultimately are untouchable players or prospects. So you have to kind of make a decision with Bryce, where is he, what's his worth to you? At what point is it not worth it to see it through with him and to, potentially move him for a starting pitcher? And for me, that bar, as we kind of discussed on the live show, to me, that bar is a genuine ace pitcher. And I don't just mean a number one, because around baseball, if you're a top 30 starting pitcher in baseball, you're technically a number one as far as I'm concerned. But to me, there's number ones, and then there's aces. The aces are guys like Yamamoto, Skubal, Green, Skeens, Brian Wu, etc. Like those kinds of starting pitchers, those kinds of targets. If you're one of those guys and you've got 3+ years of control, if you're getting a franchise altering pitcher that you're bringing in, by all means, put Bryce Eldridge in a package, because it's going to be a big package. It's not going to just be Bryce, but put Bryce Eldridge in a big package to try and make that deal happen. So if you're getting a franchise player, it makes sense. If you're looking to trade him for 2 years of Joe Ryan at 29 years old, or 1 year of Freddie Peralta at 29 years old, I think you're out of your mind. I don't think that's the time to do that deal. And to the point that a lot of people like to make where they go, oh, well, look at Luciano, look at Bart, look at whoever. To me, couple things. Number one, just direct comparison to Marco Luciano. Marco Luciano has never at any point produced like Bryce Eldridge in the minor leagues. And for anyone that doesn't believe me, feel free to go look it up. Marco Luciano is ranked where he was because of raw tools. He was a tools over production, ranked prospect. You look at, and really as he came through the system, he was kind of a two-tool guy. He had big time power and a really good arm. Not always most accurate, but a really good arm. He had okay, maybe slightly above average speed, if that. A lot of swing and miss. Not a good glove. Not good hands. Couldn't figure out where to play him. And you just look at his production. His best season was going all the way back to 2022, where at high A he hit, and 20 years old at high A. Now this is relevant. At 20 years old in high A, in 230 plate appearances, he hit 263 with a 798 OPS, 10 home runs, a 124 WRC plus. To me, that was his best year when you combine, age plus level. So he was 20 at high A. That's kind of the best that he did. Now you go into what he did at AAA, and his best season was he hit 250 with a 760 OPS, 10 home runs, and a 109 WRC plus in 2024. At last season, in 555 plate appearances, he hit 214 with a 748 OPS, 23 home runs, 96 WRC plus. And he was 23 years old last season. Bryce Eldridge at 20 last season in AAA, same place as Luciano, because I'm gonna exclude his AA numbers, which were actually better than AAA. But just at AAA, at 20 years old, Bryce Eldridge hit in 286 plate appearances, just a bit over half of what Luciano had. Hit 249 with an 836 OPS, 18 home runs, and a 105 WRC plus. He outperformed Luciano. You could argue marginally in some capacity. If you're going on WRC plus, he was only like a 10% better hitter, but he outperformed him, and he's 3 years younger. Like, we're not comparing the same thing here. You go back to his Bryce Eldridge, what he did at 20 or in AA earlier in the year, where he hit about 280 with 8 homers. I think he had almost a 140 WRC plus in one of the most brutal hitting environments in the Giants system. You go back to what Bryce did at high A, where Luciano had his best year hitting, 263 with a 798 OPS. Bryce had a nearly 1,000 OPS in high A and absolutely torched the ball in similar amounts of plate appearances. It hit over 300 at that stretch. He has been a production guy all the way through the system. So I hate that comparison. If Luciano ever had done anything close to what Bryce did, we'd be talking about him probably a little differently. He would have gotten more of a run, in my opinion. But anyway, moving off that, the other part of this is I don't think it's fair to sit there and just point at the last 10 years or 15 years or whatever and go, oh, well, they haven't produced a position player. Well, I mean, go back and look at when Buster, Belt, Crawford, Pablo, all those guys came up. The Giants hadn't really produced a homegrown position player in a long time prior to that. Even, you go back into the early 2000s, even late 90s, early 2000s, it had been a long time since they produced homegrown guys. And if you had the same mindset, you'd have lost out on that core. Just like the following run of players that came after those guys, you could sit there and go, oh, well, the Giants, that conversely, that's the same logic a lot of us had with, well, you don't want to trade the prospects because look at, we produced all these young players that are really talented. Now we have all these other guys that, they don't end up panning out. And some of them did just elsewhere, but it's just, it has no relevance. What you've done with other prospects has each guy is their own case. So I don't like playing scared with this. I don't like this mindset of, oh, we can't because the other guys didn't succeed. This guy's not going to succeed. There's no relevance. This is a completely new regime. They've changed up a lot of the philosophy with how they're going about development. We saw big improvements in the offensive profiles, especially in the system last season versus what there was under Farhan's regime. it's a completely different development path. Now, how successful is that going to be? We don't know yet, but it's just not fair to sit there and just pigeonhole one player because of other guys' failures. It doesn't matter. So that's the other part of that. I'm going to compare him to Nick Kurtz in this case. That's going to be my last kind of comparison. And then we're going to just kind of dive into why it's time to make a decision. Starting off with Kurtz, it's actually really interesting. Bryce is a year and a half younger than Kurtz. Very similar batted ball metrics. If you go off of what they did in AAA, they're both, very 90 to 98th percentile on a lot of categories with the batted ball metrics, whether it's exit velocity, average, or max exit velocity, like the barrel percentage, all those different things. A lot of them are good indicators of power hitters, which both guys have very similar, approaches there. Couple differences. Bryce does chase a bit more than Nick Kurtz. Bryce does whiff a bit more. Now his zone contact percentage is actually higher than Kurtz. So when they're swinging in zone, he actually makes more contact, but he does chase a bit more, and his out of zone contact percentage is worse than Kurtz. So a little bit more whiffs there, but as I just said, he's a year and a half younger. He's in his, if you go by his age, next year will be his age 21 season. Kurtz is actually in his age 23 season. So a bit, 2 seasons ahead in that regard, but there's a lot less experience there. Kurtz was a college player that came in. Bryce Eldridge would be entering his junior year of college right now. So there's a lot of time for him to grow on that regard. So I actually found that to be a really interesting comp, though. When you look at a lot of the numbers, they're very similar profiles. Now, why would they need to make a decision right now? Well, simply put, this is probably going to be the highest his prospect value is ever going to be as a Giant. So to me, this is where you make the decision. He's the 19th prospect in baseball on the top 100, and he is on the edge of the major leagues. He could very easily be on the opening day roster next season. This is where he's going to have the most value with other teams around the league, because other teams are going to go, oh, well, we could sell our piece and we're going to get possibly instant returns on whatever we're selling off. So it makes sense to make this decision now. And yes, they could potentially make this decision at mid-season. They could put him in AAA, play part of the year. They could, hold on to him and eventually trade him in a year or two. Sure. But my thing is you should either be making a decision to sell a guy at his absolute highest, which is probably right now, as far as prospect value, or you should be committing to developing him and building around him. And that's just kind of where they're at with Bryce Eldridge, because if you hold on to him, his value is going to start depreciating more than likely unless he establishes himself as a major leaguer, like that, which is a big risk. So if you want to keep him, that's great. Commit to it, make it work. And now, can it work with Rafi? I think it absolutely can. There's a lot of talk about the defensive redundancy and the types of players. Rafi's been a guy that he's played a lot of games, but he has not proven himself as a great defensive first baseman. Obviously, neither has Bryce. Neither guy has. I don't think anyone knows who's going to be the better defensive player. I think a lot of people have more confidence in Rafi just because he was a third baseman for longer. Not a great one, but he was a third baseman for a while, so he's more comfortable on the infield, I guess you could say. But a lot of people really like Bryce's work ethic. They like his. He's improved a ton over his 2 years at first base. And, you get a guy like Ron Washington working with him at 21 years old. Ron Washington helped develop Freddie Freeman into a great defensive first baseman. There's a chance that you could have something pretty good. I mean, he might not be a Gold Glover ever, but, you could have something where he's a really solid defensive first baseman down the road. And also, Rafi's going to be 29. It's not old by any stretch. He's in his prime, but there very easily could come a point where Rafi Devers is not your best path is not having him in the field and just having him DH. Now that maybe that's not for 4 years. I don't know. But there could come a point where that's the case. And having Bryce Eldridge there where you can either have Bryce DH now or have them split games at first and just kind of rotate to keep them both fresh. And then maybe down the road, Bryce becomes your everyday first baseman and Rafi becomes your everyday DH. There's absolutely a pathway. And this team should be trying to figure out hey, how do we build this lineup with both these guys in it? Because that could be a potentially really dangerous lineup as soon as this season, maybe in a year or two. I don't know when what the development path will look like for them, but that is absolutely playable. You can't have too many good hitters in your lineup. That's just not a thing. And I understand the struggles with swing and miss, but he's 6'7". He's still growing into his body. He's 21 years old. He very easily could be still gaining coordination and learn, and he's absolutely still developing his spin recognition, pitch recognition, whatever, all those things. Coming into with game plans and learning how pitchers are going to attack him and all these things, he's improving in those regards. So a lot of potential there. Now, my big case as to why I would keep him, though, this is where I've kind of been trying to lead to with all this. My biggest reason that I would be trying to keep him, though, is when I look at the team and the direction I want to see the Giants go, like what I want to see them become. I want to see them become a team that's going to be competing for the playoffs every year and is like a lock 90+ win team every year. Does trading him for, I'm using Joe Ryan as an example, does trading him for Joe Ryan accomplish that? It probably helps you this season. Maybe it helps you try and get closer to 90 wins this season. But he's 29 years old on a 2-year contract. With an ownership that has shown no willingness to fork out what it takes to extend guys, especially starting pitchers. Like if you don't have if you're not going to fork out the money to go sign a starting pitcher, what makes us think that they're going to sign one that they trade for to a big extension? Because I don't have that faith. So you're going to get help for a couple years. And then now you just lost one of your best potential assets for 2 years, and we're kind of back at square one come 2020, or 2028. So I don't like that idea. To me, when I think of trying to build a sustained winner, I think the best path, the thing this team needs the most is homegrown young stars that are ascending players that can be good for a long period of time with the organization. And you finally have one that's on the doorstep. And I don't like the idea of trading him for anything less than an ace. That's my personal stance. It's my belief. And I'm not prospect hoarding here. I'm always on board to trade guys for the right price. I don't think Joe Ryan or Freddie Peralta is the right price, or Mackenzie Gore. I don't think that's the right price for Bryce Eldridge. That's just my stance on that. So I'd love to hear what everybody thinks here. Go ahead and drop a comment. If you do enjoy the content, please do hit that like, hit that subscribe. We're going to be talking more winter meetings and some of the other, hopefully we get some action here. The draft lottery is tonight, so we'll know where the Giants are picking and why it'll probably be 13th again. And then also the Rule 5 draft, I believe, is going to be tomorrow. So we'll have some reactions to that probably on Thursday, if I had to guess. If the Giants make any moves in the next day or two, we'll probably try and hop on live, though, to do a breakdown of whatever deals they might do. But seems to be slow rolling, so we'll just kind of see what happens. But appreciate everybody. We'll catch you next time. Go Giants, and see y'all.